It's Cougar Sports Saturday.
It's complete. Another touchdown!
Cougar Sports Saturday. A presentation of KSL Sports.
Left wing for three. He got it again!
BYU Sports Talk by Cougar fans for Cougar fans. Brought to you by Any Hour Services, Electrical, Plumbing, Heating, and Air. Here are your hosts, Mitch Harper and Matt Baiamonte. On Utah's legacy home of the Cougars. KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM and 1160 AM.
Welcome back in. Good stuff from Parker Kingston. He's been kind of a quiet dude lately, but he's someone who could break out at any moment. And he's a guy, Mitch, that I'd love to see used a little bit more in some of the trick plays. It feels like Keelan Marion is exclusively getting those looks on the jet season. He's been effective. Don't take that away from him. But Parker is so fast. Is there 2 or 3 plays that you can draw from a game to just maybe get him in space and see what can happen?
Well, and he brings the specials, the threat that defenses have to account for, that he's going to throw it with his background being a quarterback. And there's been multiple games in his BYU career where it's worked. And it was the Arkansas game, and then this year they had
Arizona
game. That's correct, where they pulled out the special. So
we haven't seen a special in weeks, it feels like.
And that's a good point, because it felt like every week during that 8-9-0 run, BYU was pulling out something to the point where it became part of the identity. And last week Kalani Sitake wanted to see the identity emerge, and the offense started to look like the offense we saw earlier this year, but it did lack those special play calls, that the trick plays that have grown kind of part of the fabric of what BYU does offensively with Jake Retzlaff and Aaron Roderick. So I think Parker Kingston's an interesting player, and long-term too, someone next year that I think is going to be looked upon to have a big role, especially if Chase Roberts moves on after this season. Chase has indicated that he might want to move on to the NFL. Parker Kingston could take on a big role next season, him and Keelan Marion, because that wide receiver room is going to have a lot of guys potentially gone, including Darius Laster.
All right, let's dive deeper into this matchup against the Houston Cougars with 3 and Out.
3 and Out. A quick hit look at BYU's next opponent on the gridiron. It's 3 and Out on Cougar Sports Saturday.
All right, Mitch, we do this every single week during the football season. It's a deep dive where we'll give you some key players to keep an eye on, some interesting stats that could determine the outcome of the game, and, of course, some bold predictions. Like any drive, you know where it begins.
First down,
we size up the stats that we're monitoring heading into the matchup for BYU and Houston. I'll start things off. The number 118. Houston's offense is not good. They are just not good at all. It's probably the worst offense maybe since Wyoming that BYU has gone up against this season. And 118 reflects many of the national statistics where Houston is ranked at 118 or lower this year. That includes points per game, yards per game, points per play, yards per play, third down conversions, fourth down conversions, red zone percentage. So Houston's offense, if they suddenly put up 30 points, you're thinking, how did this happen? Because they have not done that at all this year. Now they do have a new interim offensive coordinator. They fired their old offensive coordinator earlier this week. Sean Bell's the interim OC. He's worked with Jeff Grimes. He's Matt Rule, Gary Bohannon. He's a Baylor product. He was a former Baylor quarterback. So this is an audition for him to really kind of sell to Willie Fritz, hey, I want to be your OC. So maybe he's going to throw some new wrinkles, but I can't imagine they're going to have a complete wholesale change. Even Jay Hill said earlier this week, that's pretty difficult to do on a week's notice this late in the season. If it was September, yeah, you could see that. But in November, at this juncture, hard to imagine. But, hey, they got nothing to lose, so maybe they can throw out some new wrinkles. But that offense has been really bad this season.
The flip side to that is maybe they catch BYU off guard, sure, but maybe this offense is even more out of sync with a new play caller who can't get on the same page, and that could lean into my number, which is the number 7. That is BYU's defensive statistic at turnovers. They've gained 23 turnovers this season. They had one against Arizona State, maybe needed another one to steal that one, but 23 on the year. This Houston offense, I feel like, is going to be prone to turn it over. Now, can BYU's defense take advantage, pull in the interceptions, make the plays. But this Houston offense is so bad that I got to believe this BYU defense, which has been consistent at one thing this season, and that is forcing turnovers every single game, I think they're going to do it again.
It's interesting how Kalani's best teams, it kind of coincides with turnover margin. I'd say 2016 is up there. I think they were plus 14. 2020 was positive in the turnover margin, 2021. And then this year, it's an easy thing to point to, but it really does tell the story a lot of times for BYU. BYU's typically not a team that can overcome a negative turnover margin. This could be a matchup where maybe you could, because just the lack of firepower that Houston poses and the lack of personnel, honestly. I mean, Houston historically has good offenses, but this is not one of them. So I think that stat is pretty interesting when it comes to BYU and the turnovers.
Second down.
Second down is where we give you some players to watch. Let's start on the defensive side of the football for BYU. Tyler Batty, I want to see him get a sack. He's had a great year, but the sack numbers have not been there, and they really haven't been there for this whole defensive line. Now, they've been really good at stopping the run outside of that Arizona State game where Scadaboo, maybe the best back in the Big 12, he ran all over that BYU defense. But where are the sacks? Where is the pass chaos from this defensive line? Feels like it's been trending down a little bit. So Tyler Batty, can he get a sack in his final game at LaVell Edwards Stadium?
BYU 14 sacks on the season. They're in the bottom 10 nationally in team sacks this year. So you'd like
Why
to
do you
see.
think this is happening year after year?
It's a good question, because I really felt like they turned the corner early in the season, especially how good they looked against SMU. And I bring that up because SMU's they're going to the ACC championship game. That's not a fluke how BYU played in that one. It's a good question, because I don't feel like it's digging into depth. I mean, Harrison Taggart doubtful tonight at middle linebacker, but they've stayed relatively healthy. Maybe it's just they need more top-end talent. Maybe they don't have enough of that elite talent, enough of it, to generate that rush. But the thing is like, even when I say that, talking it out loud, I mean, Tyler Batty, Jack Kelly, that should be enough. Blake Mangelson's a freaky athlete. He could be an NFL guy next April. It's been surprising to see it regress.
It feels like the opposite side, and I'm not calling anyone out, but
sure,
there just hasn't been enough pressure opposite of Batty to draw double teams away from him. And then when you're getting single coverage, are you making the plays? It just doesn't feel like that's happening.
They have had more quarterback hurries this year, and I think there's been a little bit more pressure, but just getting home and finishing the job, there's still much to be desired there. Again, the stats don't lie. I mean, they're the bottom 10 nationally once again, so it'd be nice to see maybe a huge night getting to the quarterback, getting to Z and Chris for Houston, their quarterback. For me, the players that I'm going to be keeping an eye on are Jacob Robinson, cornerback. He's been a stud. Jacob Robinson's been a really good player, and I think it's easy to forget now, but his first season when he came to BYU from Utah State, there were struggles. When he was playing that nickel spot, and he gave up some big plays, but, he just got better as the years went by, week after week, practice after practice. He just got better, and he's become an absolute lockdown corner. And when he arrived at BYU, I didn't know really what my projection was on him. I mean, even the coaching staff, they kind of missed on him. They projected him out of Orem probably incorrectly. He ended up going to Utah State, and then luckily he comes to BYU. But Jacob Robinson is a stud, and I wonder what he will be NFL-wise this April, if he can get in the later rounds. But I think he'll definitely get an undrafted free agent contract and be at a minimum a training camp guy that gets a chance to be on a 53-man roster. So I'm excited to see Jacob tonight. And then for me, also on the offensive side, Chase Roberts. I think he's BYU's top receiver this season. And as I noted earlier, Chase might consider the NFL next year, might go. So this could be potentially his last home game. Hopefully not. Hopefully he runs it back next year, because I think that would be huge for BYU. But Chase, has reminded us during this losing streak that, to me, he's still BYU's best receiver, and he needs a big game tonight.
And I'm glad they changed that catch. That should have always been a catch against Arizona State. His numbers look a lot. That was an amazing catch, by the way. He was being held down. There were penalties galore on that final play that didn't get called. It's in the rearview mirror. We don't need to rehash that. But having an arm pinned down and to catch a Hail Mary between 4 Sun Devil defenders.
Yeah.
He is a special talent. I quite honestly, Mitch, I'd like to see him targeted more because I feel like he is BYU's best receiver. His counterpart, Darius Lassiter, someone I want to watch tonight. His production's dipped of late, Mitch. Against Utah, only 4 catches. Against Kansas, only 3 catches. Last week against Arizona State, he went over the 100-yard mark, but only 5 grabs in that one. Had a couple drops in these games. You look at his numbers in the middle of the season, 8 grabs against Baylor, 5 against Arizona, 6 against Oklahoma State. 2 of those 3 games, he was over 100 yards, and against Arizona had 86, so he was close to 100 yards. Can he get back to that type of production? Because Jake loves Darius Lassiter.
Yep.
He's the most targeted receiver on the team. It feels like he's always, you can pencil him in for double-digit targets a game, but can he grab 7, 8, 9 of these attempts rather than 3 and 4? He's got to be more productive, and some of that just comes to catch the football. When it hits you in the hands, catch the football.
It's interesting when you bring up that Jake and Darius have that strong connection, because remember earlier in the year at Wyoming, people thought, oh, does Darius not like Jake? They were going back and forth at each other. We even asked Darius in an interview what that was about. He's just like, no, we got a great relationship. We got that chemistry together that we can, when we disagree with something, we can go back and forth at each other. So I hope Darius has a big night. And Darius Lassiter is the type of athlete that I think just works at BYU, where Eastern Michigan transfer levels up to the P5 ranks or P4 ranks, and he's been highly productive. And I mean, I don't know what his views are of just the culture of BYU, but I got a feeling that he really liked it here, and that he's the type of guy that will be remembered in high regard at BYU. And so I think for players in the future at the transfer portal, like you look at BYU, you might say, oh, that's LDS school. Like, does that work for me? Like, it's a big platform, huge fan base. You're going to get a lot of attention. You're going to have T-shirts made of you if you make big plays. Like, Darius Lassiter's had an impact, and he's going to be a guy that's remembered in high regard at BYU.
Absolutely. I love that him and Keelan Marion and others have really thrived here. We talked with Keelan Marion a few weeks ago, and same kind of sentiment that they've really thrived here at BYU.
Third down.
Bold predictions now. I'll start, Mitch. I think that Jacob Robinson, who you noted, he's going to have a big night. I think he's going to have a interception return to the house. I think that would be a fitting end to his career at BYU. It's not the end. There's postseason ahead for BYU football, but it's the end of their time at LaVell Edwards Stadium. And for him to go out with an interception, preferably a pick six, I think would be noteworthy for one of the great BYU defensive backs in its history. I'm thinking through the list, and there's not 10 guys better than Jacob Robinson who have played defensive back.
He's up there. He's definitely in the all-time best cornerbacks, and to do it for 4 years is pretty impressive. Wait, you're going to say this is the last home game? You're not going to go Joe Tess and say 2-loss BYU, they're in the playoff.
Hey, I think they should
kidding.
be.
They're not.
I know,
spoiler alert.
They should squarely be in the conversation.
I agree.
I don't think they should be in the top 12, but they've got 2 losses that came down to the final play of the game. And the thing that really bothers me about the way that they're evaluated right now, Mitch, is the omission of the top 25 wins. It's like those don't matter. The SMU win, whatever, we'll just bat it away. It was early in the year. That wasn't like. And then also the strength of schedule. They're playing a tough strength of schedule, and they have some top 25 wins. How does that not have you in the mix?
21 nationally in Sagarin. I just had to bring that up because last night Joe Tess tore, and I love Joe Tess.
Yeah, I do too.
Big, what say you, Matt? Like Georgia in the playoff 10-2. But it was just so funny last night because I feel like BYU, if they get to their 10th win tonight, they should be in the mix for an at-large bid, I would think. Maybe have a chance at a home game, but they're not going to. I know what this.
The Tulane loss was a big deal for the Big 12.
It was. It was huge, and the Big 12 champ should be automatically in and potentially get that bye, but
they're not going to get the bye. Boise State's going to get the bye.
I think there's still a chance. I do think they could spring because I think there's still an opportunity. But anyway, I think that for my bold prediction tonight, BYU scores another touchdown on special teams this season. Kelly Papinga's going to dial up something, whether it's a punt return, kick return, blocked punt. I don't know how it's going to come, but special teams. gets BYU some points tonight against the Cougs from Houston.
All right, let's take a break. On the other side, we'll get you our score predictions and wrap up the show.